There now seems to be an actual university study that backs up our belief that going where you're treated best beats staying in your country and fighting. I'm going to share the study with you right now. My approach to life as a lifelong entrepreneur, someone who was selling stuff door to door at 8 years old, someone who was riding his bike up and down the street to sell websites to people selling their homes at 12 years old, someone who's been in business pretty much my entire adult life, is nobody's coming to save you. You've got to take control. You've got to solve your own problems. And if you do that, you can be highly successful. Don't wait around for anyone else to save you. And by extension, don't wait around for anyone to reduce your tax rate or to vote your way to more freedom. It just doesn't work, in my opinion. So what we've said for the entire lifetime, a decade now of Nomad Capitalist, is don't stay and fight. Go where you're treated best. And it's not about cutting and running. It's not about being unpatriotic, although certainly patriotism, I think, instills in people this idea that they have to defend their country even when it no longer fights for them. We've seen in the last couple of years people saying, wait a second, what's my country doing for me? Why are they taking so much money? When the chips are down, they're against me. People are now seeing that. But this is not about what we preach, getting out of Dodge. It's about finding opportunities where you can be treated better, you can pay lower taxes, you can have more freedom, you can have a better lifestyle, and taking advantage of that rather than just sitting and hoping and praying and believing that your country is going to magically go back to the country that you wanted it to be, or that they're going to lower your tax rate, or that they're going to do something for you. Now, if it's your first time here, my name's Andrew Henderson, the founder of Nomad Capitalist. It's a boutique consultancy that helps 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally reduce their taxes, protect their assets overseas, and obtain dual citizenship to have a backup plan in times of chaos. I'm also the host of Nomad Capitalist Live, the biggest and best offshore conference in the world. And my belief is diversify your interests, whether it's your residence, your citizenship, where your company is based internationally, to take advantage and stop waiting around on the government. I remember being in Turkey, watching the balloons rise across the mountains from my cave hotel room when Barack Obama was reelected. And a lot of my friends in the United States who were business owners said, oh, great, 4 more years of this guy, the place is falling apart, what are we going to do? They got angry, they were miserable. 4 years later, Donald Trump got elected, and some, not all of them, were like, oh, great, now all of our problems are solved. Well, what really happened, right? If I recall correctly, taxes under the Bush administration were 35% income tax. That was the highest rate. Then Obama put it back to the Clinton era rates of 39.6%. Then Trump came in and lowered it to 37%. I'm talking to folks about how to reduce their taxes to 0, 1, 2, 4, 8%. Anywhere in that kind of single-digit range, sometimes low double digits. The idea of going from 39.6% to 37% and that makes some great politician that's solving all of your problems, to me, is silly. The idea that a country, especially a country as big as the U.S., and especially countries that are as resolved as most Western countries are, to go in a certain direction that goes against your freedoms, that has more government overreach, that has more regulation, that has more surveillance. Are they just going to change on a dime and the entire culture is going to say, hey, we don't want this anymore? No, let's go back to this libertarian laissez-faire philosophy. That ship has sailed in the Western world, but there are plenty of countries that we spend time in where they are developing more freedoms. They are lowering taxes. They are welcoming businesses. They are welcoming wealthy people, whereas they're being repelled in the West. And so my philosophy is, why don't you just go where you're treated best and find the places, rather than sitting and hoping that if you vote, somehow your vote's going to cancel out 300 million other people in your country, or however many actually vote, and that's going to change. Most people, if you believe in low taxes and you believe in freedom, are going against you in the Western world right now. But that does not mean that we should have a myopic view, because there are places where it's like, hey, we want to grow our economy. We're here, we want to be here. How do we do that? I've got a picture with the former president of Georgia, Mikhail Saakashvili, who basically turned the tables over and said, we're getting rid of almost all the taxes. We're flattening and reducing all the taxes. You've got to change the Constitution to raise the rates. We got to bring in business. And it worked. It raised the standard of living. It's still not at the United States levels, but guess what? Georgia is now as free of an economy as the United States. It was communist within your lifetime. And so why would you necessarily try and sit and change your country unless you just don't want to go where you're treated best? Now, for those who think, hey, I can vote my way to success, here's from Represent Us, represent.us. Have you ever felt like the government doesn't care what you think? Professors Martin Gillens from Princeton and Benjamin Page from Northwestern University looked at more than 20 years worth of data to answer a simple question. Does the government represent the people? Spoiler alert, not really. Their study took data from nearly 2,000 public opinion surveys and compared it to the policies that end up becoming law. In other words, they compared what the public wanted to what the government actually did. What they found was extremely unsettling and, to me, not at all surprising. The opinions of 90% of Americans have essentially no impact at all. Now, forget the fact that I think most Americans, most Canadians, most Australians, most whomever, probably don't want the same things that you do, right? One of the things that I see at Nomad Capitalist Live, for example, our annual conference, is people come, and what they love the most, besides all the information we share, is they love the camaraderie. They do not have many people in their lives who believe in laissez-faire economic policies, who want substantially lower taxes, who believe in having a backup plan. And the same thing with our clients. I'll say, hey, what does your family think about this? Do you know how many times, not their immediate family, but do you know how many times people say, oh, I haven't told my parents I'm getting a second passport. They'd think I'm nuts. They would say, this is the best country on earth. Why would you even have a backup plan? People who believe what we do here, who believe in more freedom and more opportunities and just being left alone, let us live our lives as we wish, they're increasingly in the minority. Okay, so forget the fact that most people in your Western country believe that. The places where I spend time, I do believe that people increasingly want to be left alone. You've seen it in countries where they've lived through communism, they've lived through authoritarianism. We don't want to go back there. But, in countries like the heiresses of countries, the legacy brand countries that are the West, they've somehow detached the fact that, hey, we can't keep going in this wrong direction or we're going to be back from what our ancestors sought to avoid. They haven't got that together because they're way too comfortable. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of you guys watching this are way too comfortable because you're like, well, it's still a pretty good country as your tax rates go up, as they take more and more of your freedoms, as they freeze your bank accounts, as they do whatever. It hasn't, I think a lot of people in the West just haven't really connected. Like, it's progressively getting worse. There's not the impetus to take action. And I think a lot of people, we all want to think everyone agrees with us. Most people are with freedom. No, they're not. But whether they are or not, 90% of the impact of Americans, or what they believe, had no impact at all in actual creating policy. Now, you would think that would potentially be good if most people are against your opinion, right? If the majority of folks want higher taxes, want you to pay more because you're in the evil rich, want to take away freedoms, want to do more of the greater good and go after successful people. But I think that what these studies basically found was, no, politicians just do what they want. They do what helps them get reelected. Surprise, surprise. They put policy out that just makes them look good. And right now, I think in the Western world, that is primarily, for many politicians, again, tax the rich. I'm seeing more talk of why are we even auditing anyone with a lower income? We should only audit wealthy people. Some people like Elizabeth Warren in the U.S. have basically come out with the thinnest of thin veils on multiple occasions saying, all wealthy people are tax cheats. They're just unethical people. That is the belief of these politicians. So if people eat that up, let them do it, and they'll put some of those policies in place, and just progressively over time it gets worse and worse and worse because the policies kind of catch up with them. The article, though, continues. It says, Princeton University study, public impact has near zero impact on U.S. law. The study found that the preferences of the average American appear to have only a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy. One thing that does have an influence, money. Now, again, you think that some of the people always talk, there's money in politics. I can tell you as the entrepreneur, the type of people that we serve, 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneurs and investors. When I lived in the United States, I didn't feel like anyone was looking out for my interests. Even some of the business groups, were they really looking out for my interests? Were they really helping me? No. And I paid huge taxes. I'm not Elon Musk. I'm not Jeff Bezos. And so who's really looking out for you? Maybe you could argue if you're a billionaire, but those of us who are, merely earning 7 or 8 figures, have 7, 8, 9-figure net worths. I mean, like, who's really fighting for? Are you out there like donating fortunes? I don't think the average person that I talk to is. And so politicians are not representing you. You're staying and fighting essentially for nothing. It says that economic elites, business interests, and people who can afford lobbyists still carry major influence. I never hired a lobbyist in the United States. Have you? Who's lobbying on your behalf? And so nearly every issue we face, they say, is caught in the grip of corruption. So now we basically know your politicians don't care about you. They posture to get votes. The culture's going in the wrong direction, so they're going to increasingly posture to do things that don't serve your needs if you're a successful person, because you're the minority, right? It's the same reason that the United States can tax its citizens no matter where they live. You get 8, 9, 10 million Americans living overseas. Nobody cares about them. They just position it like, oh, these are some rich fat cats living in Dubai and Monaco, sleeping with, Russian supermodels and not contributing. And so, hey, tax them. How dare they? That's the image that they kind of try and portray, even though it's not most of the 10 million people who are living overseas. But also you have this, it's caught in the grip of corruption. How many people living in the Western world think that their country is corrupt? And actually, when you look at some of the corruption indexes, you see countries like Singapore, like New Zealand, which are very much corruption-free. The United States, for example, really doesn't score that high on transparency compared to where you think it would score. So not only on top of everything else where your politicians are just basically advocating against your interests, it's also not as corruption-free as you would expect. People who are probably not you are spending billions influencing the government. And even though you think, these people are wealthy, have you really seen lower tax rates? No, you haven't seen lower tax rates as a successful person. They're pushing more wealth taxes. They're pushing unrealized capital gains taxes. Your income tax rose and fell a bloody 3 to 5%, right? Again, when I'm helping people, we're going from 37 to like 3. That's our goal, 37 to 4 or 10. I mean, that's substantial. We're not screwing around here. And yet, the average person who chooses to stay and fight is just not getting what they think that they're getting. They think that they go to the ballot box. They think that they, maybe they go to a protest. Maybe they post comments on Twitter how don't go down with the ship. And to me, it's just kind of a giant ego movement of I'm from this great country, where as if the odds of your being born in a country that was statistically the best. Listen, I was born in the United States, and I realized, there are some things that are great about the United States. I realize that now being out, hey, there are a couple of good things. Can I not get those things largely somewhere else from a smorgasbord of countries? Yeah, of course I can. And especially for someone like myself who is open to adventure, open to living in different countries, who wants to do business in different countries, it's a pretty easy decision not to stay and fight. But even if you like your country, why wouldn't you at least have a backup plan knowing that your government isn't representing you? If the last couple of years haven't taught you that, I don't know what will. But now it is proven by university studies. Your government's not fighting for you. You should not stay and fight for them. You should take matters into your own hands as an entrepreneur would and go where you're treated best.